The Department of Homeland Security says that Mexican cartels placed bounties on U.S. law enforcement officers and officials. Joining us to discuss is Ammon Blair, a senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He specializes in border security and immigration policy with over 2 decades of experience as a U.S. Border Patrol agent and U.S. Army officer. So, Ammon, good to see you. Good afternoon. How serious would you say this bounty threat to law enforcement?
It's going to be quite serious. As we can see, that we already had 3 gun attacks here in Texas. With the last one, we had some deaths because of that. Now, unfortunately, many Americans think that the cartels, a majority of them are present inside the United States. That's really not how they operate. They operate in a decentralized manner. They have cells that are completely compartmentalized and utilize intermediaries or subcontractors and contractors to do their bidding here in the U.S. In this case, just what DHS put out, they're utilizing gangs like Latin Kings, and they're utilizing the communists or the extreme far left on the streets to do their bidding. So the cartels are still maintaining that control, that command and control, but they're doing it from afar away, and they're doing so that there's a degrees of separation between them and themselves. And it's just a form of counterintelligence work that they're conducting.
So, have Mexican cartels always collaborated with street gangs? What is the objective here for these cartels?
Yeah, good question. Yes. So the cartels, ever since they came up into the United States and built that entire pipeline when that was like early 90s, they started working hand in hand with our street gangs. You can look it up on our Texas DPS website. They tier them based off of the level with which they work with Mexican cartels: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And so Latin Kings is one of those tiers. They are a tier 1 gang. Now, in regards to Antifa and communists, yes, we saw this actually in the first Trump administration down there on the southern border. When we started having caravans coming up, we noticed that these anarchists and communists were working on the other side inside Mexico, trying to smuggle human beings and working with the cartels to come up into the United States. So there are a lot of actual Mexican journalists that were down there documenting this, showing that Antifa 100% was in Mexico working hand in hand to eradicate our sovereignty. Because at the end of the day, when you go onto their think tank right now, which is crimethink.com, you can see that their entire goal is to eradicate the sovereignty of this nation by eradicating each and every one of our personal or private property.
So, after it does that, then what? I mean, is it looking for control of these Mexican cartels?
Yeah, really, it's looking for a diffusion of our law enforcement. Look, if all of our law enforcement, federal law enforcement, whether that's Border Patrol assisting ICE, whether that's DEA, FBI, if we have to consolidate all of our resources and manpower to just protect ICE operations, that leaves every other cartel operation inside the United States completely wide open. The same tactic was done at our southern border. When you have millions of illegal aliens coming up onto the border, it forces every single federal, local, state, and tribal agency to deal with that humanitarian crisis or challenge. Therefore, it leaves all the other operations that the cartels are involved in completely wide open. This is the same game, and that is why they are heavily invested in making sure that ICE can't do their job, that all the federal agencies have to assist ICE doing their job so that they can continue to conduct their operations.
Do you think the current violence that we're seeing against law enforcement officers is a result of this tiered bounty system that's incentivizing different acts of violence?
No, I think it's because of it's because of the lack of rule of law that's happening in our streets. Look, unfortunately, we still have elected officials, we have judges, we have district attorneys, we have all these people that are siding with the communists on the streets. They're siding with anarchists. They're siding with everyone that is looking to disrupt and destroy and destabilize our cities. And so, because they see that there's very little action to counter this, there are arrests here and there on protesters, but for the most part, there has been no accountability on the rhetoric. There's been no accountability on any other action other than an assault on an agent. There's been no complete disruption of any of their operations attacking ICE or trying to stop ICE conducting their operations.
So I'm not an expert here, but how are these cartels funding these things, like the bounty, for example? I mean, is it fentanyl?
Yeah, great question. So the cartels are in multiple businesses. They're not just in narcotics, human smuggling, but they're also involved in our agriculture. They're involved in licit and illicit commodities. And look, every those millions of people that are inside the United States are recurring revenue for them. Meaning, when you arrest someone as a border patrol agent on the border, and they tell you that they owe $8,000 in U.S. cash to the Mexican cartels before they can pay off their debt and are no longer indentured servants, that takes time. And so the cartels, all these millions of illegal aliens inside the United States, are indebted to the Mexican cartel. So they're still receiving a recurring payment from all these illegal aliens. So the cartels, as an enterprise, have so many different ways and means to make money that this is a drop in the bucket to put a bounty and have the gang members, quote unquote gang members, do it themselves. And then also there's a degree of separation showing that, hey, we weren't involved. We're in Mexico.
Okay, so how do we cut off this money supply to these cartels, and what is the most effective strategy to protect federal agents?
Yeah, great question. First and foremost, we need to identify all the cartel nodes from Mexico into all the way into the United States. Unfortunately, a lot of the financial systems that the cartels utilize are Chinese banking systems or apps. And so right now, the Department of Justice needs to actively pursue with our intelligence community, going out and finding all the social network and networks and also nodes of the cartels, and just going after the logistics supply chain, whether that's finances, whether that is narcotic supply, whether that is transportation, stash houses, you name it. Second, how can we protect? The number one thing that we can do right now to protect our law enforcement is upholding the law. Make it so that way they can't be in those streets. This is not just some regular protest. This is a revolution, and we need to see it as such. And we need to hold every single person accountable that is inciting this violence towards our law enforcement. The next is also protecting them with our U.S. military. Look, right now it's in the court system that we can't utilize the National Guard. Unfortunately, the judiciary is thinking that they have the authority of the executive in this manner, and they're trying to make decisions for our president. So that's going to continue to be heard in the court, but we do need our military to also protect them.
Okay, so on the point of enforcing law, the Department of Homeland Security said people who dox or threaten or lay hands on officers will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. What are your thoughts on how the current administration is doing in terms of deterring these types of actions through law enforcement?
As we can see every single day, there's another attack. We can see that there's going to be a No Kings rally on this coming Saturday. Look, it's not stopping it, because if you wait until they make an assault on an agent, that's very reactionary. We are not doing proactive investigative work to conduct a complete investigation on all these networks and then go after them. Yes, I know that they invited citizen journalists to the White House to understand the nature of the threat and also these networks, but that should tell you something. Why is it that our federal government has to ask citizen journalists to come in and give them intel when we have three-letter agencies that should be doing that themselves? That kind of shows how broken the system has been and where we need to go. Right now, we're having to utilize citizen journalists to even understand what's actually happening on the ground and also internally, in order for us to make any certain arrests or any claims or threat of subversion or violence. So right now, really, in my opinion, if we want to protect this, if we want to stop this from progressing further into the later this year or into next year, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to dismantle them as we would any terrorist organization in any contingency operation outside the United States. And this is not foreign internal defense. This is domestic internal defense against domestic terrorists and communist presence.
Okay, Ammon, I just have one more question here. Is there anything that regular people can do, or would you say this is purely a government problem?
I think really it's to dispel the myths. I think everyone needs to understand that right now, what is impacting or what the actual war is on you and your citizenship. Look, they want complete open borders. They don't agree with national sovereignty. They don't agree with your sovereignty. They don't agree with the state sovereignty. They don't agree with private property rights. All you have to do is read the Communist Manifesto, and you can see exactly what these people want is straight destruction. So what you can do is completely understand the threat first, understand, like reading Victor Davis Hanson's The Dying Citizen, understand or read Jesse Kelly's book, The Anti-Communist Manifesto. There's those two books would get you so far ahead in terms of actually understanding the threat. So that way you can actually clearly see it, whether that's on social media platforms, and you can also inform your neighbors that this is not a racist thing that we're doing. Mass deportations is actually impacting and affecting and protecting your citizenship.
Okay, well, Amen, really interesting stuff. I'm really happy that you shared your insights with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.